All right. So we as a country need to learn from history and not repeat it. And what you need to know can be found on my website, Doctors of Courage, because I have the knowledge, being the owl, of what the true cause of drug abuse is. And it's on my website. It's on a video. It's also available on a DVD. The most important thing to understand is that opioids are not the cause of addiction. No drug causes addiction. The thinking that you are going to stop addiction by attacking and removing opioids from society is complete idiocy. You see, opioids have been used for thousands of years. Thousands of years. This book, written in 1833 by a Tennessee physician, is called Wright's Family Medicine. Every condition in this book, the primary treatment is opium. Opium was criminalized as a racist move against the Orientals that came into America, into California, to work on our railroads. And they had opium dens, they were called. An opium den sounds real, horrible, but actually all it was a bar. Okay? They would go to the opium den, smoke their opium, and be, they were not addicted. It was just like going to a bar and having a glass of alcohol. If any of you have ever had any kind of alcohol at all, are you an addict? Of course not. Neither were they, but it was criminalized. Then, because of cocaine and marijuana, the blacks were criminalized. This is all political moves 100 years ago to disenfranchise minorities, because we still are a country of discrimination. So that's the main thing. Truth is, the war on drugs used to disenfranchise the non-white populations is the cause of our problem today. Innocent physicians are being attacked for money. In the government's war on pain doctors, Ronald Libby states, the DEA conducts training sessions teaching their agents how to target pain doctors so as to take their assets as fruits of criminal enterprise, hoard their money, and then prevent those doctors from having competent defense. How are we getting where we are today? Outrageous government conduct by an out-of-control Justice Department, specifically illegal use of the Controlled Substance Act, which is adulterating the phrase for a legitimate medical purpose within the usual course of professional practice. Now, according to the Controlled Substance Act, Statute 802.56c, only the doctor can determine what is legitimate. Okay? That's the way it should be. That's the way the law was written. They are illegally using the law to create crime where there is no crime. We are law-abiding, responsible, trained professionals, not drug pushers. For the DOJ to be charging us with illegitimate prescribing to bona fide patients is gross government overreach. First, the supervision of medicine is under state jurisdiction, as already been mentioned. Second, doctors are exempt by the CSA, and this is supported through 50 years of Supreme Court case law. Now, how can you, the legislative branch, be allowing this flagrant misinterpretation of the law that your predecessors wrote to be happening? Where are the checks and balances? Constitutional rights are being violated. The Fourth Amendment of unreasonable search and seizures, the Fifth Amendment of due process, the Sixth Amendment of an impartial jury and having assistance of counsel, and the 14th Amendment of depriving a person of the liberty of property without due process. We have reached the point of U.S. versus Russell pertaining to outrageous government conduct that states, the acts of the government have exceeded the limits of what a free society can tolerate. And we, Grassroots America, are here to tell you we're not going to take it anymore. The Supreme Court has stated in multiple cases that what the U.S. attorneys are doing is unlawful. In Linder versus U.S., direct control of medical practice is beyond the power of the federal government. Congress cannot directly restrict the professional judgment of the physician or interfere with its free exercise in the treatment of disease. In Gonzalez versus Oregon, Congress regulates medical practice insofar as it bars doctors from using their prescription writing powers as a means to engage in illicit drug dealing and trafficking is conventionally understood, meaning being out on the street corner saying, hey, give me $60, I'll write you for 10 Lortab. That would be illegal, okay? Seeing a patient in your office, even a fake patient that the DEA sends in, saying he has pain and he's treated for such, and then they come back, oh, he didn't really have pain, so the doctor committed crimes. That's what they're doing in the courts today. Many more, all described in my ebook, which you can find on the website, Using the Law Illegally Against Doctors, says basically the same thing. Decency, security, and liberty alike demand that government officials be subjected to the same rules of conduct that are commands to the citizen. Government teaches by example. If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for the law. It breeds anarchy. We ask for the legislators to remove immunity from these government officials that are breaking the law against us. I was a physician convicted through outrageous government conduct. I spent 26 months incarcerated. In my case, as well as others that you have testimonies of on your sheets, those that you will hear today, outrageous government conduct includes search warrants without just cause. They come into our offices, they take our records, and they create a crime. Lying government agents committing perjury. She knew they were selling their prescriptions. Forced perjury from witnesses. My nurse was interrogated for 6 hours and told that if she didn't tell the lies that they told her to tell on the witness stand, they would put her in prison. Using law enforcement and the high-intensity drug trafficking areas to target potential witnesses. They know someone is on pain medicine. They pull them over for some illegal act. It's not illegal, but they claim they're doing something illegal, and then they say, oh, you're so-and-so doctor's patient. If you'll testify against this doctor that he gave you prescriptions illegally, we won't charge you with anything. This is becoming more and more rampant across the United States. It's going to get worse because the laws now say that law enforcement have free access to prescription monitoring program just for that purpose. Actual criminal action by government agents. In my case, the government agent called in a prescription because 6 CSs came to my office to try to become a patient, and I denied them because they weren't, I could tell, because I'm an alternative physician, that they were not legitimate pain patients. So what the government did was, rather than come up with number 7 to try to get into my office, they called the prescription in themselves. That's illegal, okay? That's a non-doctor calling in a prescription for a patient, and yet that's a DEA agent that did that. Collusion with public defenders. Doctors are forced to use public defenders, and then they're in collusion with the government to sell us out. And an asset forfeiture of everything the doctor owns. We demand that the Department of Justice be investigated for outrageous government conduct and be punished accordingly. Use the same sentencing table they're using on us. The sentencing table that was designed to attack the cartels from Colombia. That's what's being used on us. Government agents have used our trust. We trusted them to be ethical, lawful, and with the main focus of justice. They aren't. Legislation must remove the immunity that these unlawful agents are committing. All doctors convicted of Controlled Substance Act infractions or who have pled guilty to other crimes because of that should be instantly released, exonerated, given back their licenses, and be able to practice again. Dr. Alan Solarian, he was a former respected D.C. psychiatrist and actually worked for the FBI. He had his home raided, his wife and son shackled, his 3 cars, $168,000 confiscated, and there were multiple deaths of his patients, his employees, his lawyer, Siobhan Reynolds. They were all working together. Dr. Solarian himself was submitted Yes. He is now in exile in Greece. His case was dropped, but the damage had been done to him psychologically. He left America in fear.
I'm ready to leave.
Yes.
Me too.
Don't go yet.
The
Germany.
No,
It's
it's an election year. Don't go yet.
The DOJ knows what they are doing is unlawful. They made sure that two doctors were unable to testify today. It will be on this panel. Dr. Clarence Verdell, a psychiatrist in Philadelphia, is a victim of a coerced plea agreement and was denied entry into a federal building by the PO. Now, the Eastern District of Pennsylvania is one of the districts that's actually racking in the dough attacking doctors. 40 doctors that I have on my list, and it's a short list of doctors that have been attacked. 40 doctors in Eastern District of Pennsylvania have been attacked, 20 of which are from Philadelphia. Now, you don't walk the streets of Philadelphia and see doctors out on the street selling prescriptions for drugs, do you? No, these are all legitimate positions, but the government has found a way to make money off of us. This has got to be stopped. Okay, also, Dr. Verdell was an addiction specialist, and now addiction specialists are being charged with the same crime, and yet the same token, legislation is being put up there saying, oh, well, we need more people being called opioid addicts, and they need to be put on buprenorphine, but then they're going to turn around and charge you with a crime for doing so. So they're basically funneling more doctors into the path of taking their assets and putting them in prison, and it's all for money. The fact is that a medical prescription only violates the Controlled Substance Act if there is intent to knowingly distribute opioids to maintain an addiction or sale. So having a patient chart with a diagnosis and a treatment should automatically exonerate the physician. There should not be a part of documentation as an element of crime. You haven't documented this, you haven't documented that. Those are not criminal. Those are, if anything, malpractice or things to bring before the state medical board, not criminal. Documentation is actually a product of insurance. Most of you are too young to remember, but I don't. I remember doctors coming to the house. All they had was a little black bag. They examined you and they left. There was no documentation. It was the event of insurance that required the documentation. Documentation, the absence of it, is not a criminal act. Many physicians are being forced into plea agreements based on their attorney's failure to grasp the concept of criminal intent. The burden in the court has been shifted from the state, where it belongs, to the practitioners where there is no evidence. But the court has already won through the court of public opinion due to all the propaganda being spread. So we need you, the legislature, to enforce the laws in words that even U.S. attorneys can understand, that would require strict adherence to criminal standards for convictions of doctors. O great Pharaoh, let our people go.
At this time, we're going to have our attorney, John Flannery, former federal drug prosecutor of the SD New York and civil rights attorney.
It's inseparable to be a criminal defense lawyer, not be a civil rights lawyer. I'm a kid from the South Bronx, and if the cop on the beat, which is over here, we talked to him in my neighborhood, 143rd Avenue. And I went to prosecute cases in the Southern District of New York. I wanted to prosecute additional corruption cases. And the U.S. attorney who was in the office when I had this idea was Whitney North Seymour, who's a Republican. He was appointed by Nixon, and he indicted the Attorney General of the United States, his own boss. And I thought, that's the kind of office I want to work in. Now, I also ended up prosecuting a lot of narcotics cases. The so-called French Connection was not just a movie, it was a pipeline. And there were drugs from the Far East and so forth. And the CIA was actually using it as a medium of exchange and flying this stuff around. And I watched witnesses get killed, and we prosecuted mobsters. And this was in the 70s. And this was the war on drugs. we still try to do the same stuff. But like the pastor said, agents don't want to get shot in the ass. And so it's much easier to chase a doctor in an air-conditioned office. It's much easier to pick as a target a person of color or from another state, nation state. To pick a person that perhaps slept with a patient and therefore is going to be more susceptible in a trial to being convicted, and convincing everybody that that is what we're about. That we're not prosecuting doctors who heal, we're prosecuting doctors who deal. Now, the thing about the current war on drugs, putting aside how safe or not, and how much money or not they're making from it, is the premise that we have such an epidemic of opiates, and we have so many victims in the country, that we're going to do something for these addicts. Maybe we're going to treat them as ill rather than as criminal, but we're not. Just weeks ago, and it's not the only case because I have the advantage of practicing in court now and having remembered what it's like to work on the Hill. I was special counsel to the Senate Judiciary and to the House Judiciary Committee. I have a client who overdosed at an intersection in the leafy green areas of Loudoun County, and they brought him back with Narcan. So that's a good story. Here's an addict, we brought him back. So what did they do with him? They take him to the emergency room. That's good. 45 minutes after he was unconscious, brought back, in the emergency unit recovering, there are 2 police officers in the unit with him, telling him, if you just tell us what you know, we're here to help you. So he gives them consent to search his cell phone, to search his car, and he tells them everything he knows, and his source is from out of state. So a couple of weeks passed, they prosecute him for a felony, using the drug that he overdosed on as Exhibit A of a controlled substance. Not enough to examine more than once. There's just not enough stuff there. That's what we're doing to the addicts that publicly people on the Hill and in my area are touting how they're going to help addicts. Not at all. Not at all. When I was up here, one of the things I was conscious of, and I know that the people here are, is if we introduce legislation for problem A, are we going to have the unintended consequence of doing something else? And this war is a simple war because it plays to a bias. It plays to a sentiment that, I, a man, do not take pain medication. Anybody who does is not in order with his maker, or is weak, or can be dealt with in some way. And this is a person speaking who has never suffered from pain. And we're not talking acute pain, you hurt your knee on a basketball game. We're talking about chronic pain, unremitting, persistent pain that just doesn't go away. It doesn't let you sleep at night, doesn't let you stay awake during the day, doesn't allow you to have sex, doesn't allow you to do your job, makes you a miserable individual. And what do? When you're at that point and you can't get pain medication and you're on a highway going 60 miles an hour, you think, my insurance will still cover me if I run into that post. And I won't be embarrassing to my parents or my family or to my loved ones because they'll think it was an accident and I'll end this. I had a patient come into my office, which is you didn't mention my book, which is the second chapter in this book. And if anybody here sends me an email with your snail mail address, I'll send you a copy of it, no cost, because it outlines all of the things that are being done wrong in our so-called criminal justice system, our just us system. What we tell the public and what we really do, what we're really about. I'm at an age I was a law clerk in New York, I was a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. We call it the Sovereign District because we ignore the injustice. And I've done criminal defense work. I've done civil. I've had cases from Hawaii to the Virgin Islands. I know that may sound good, but when you're on a case, it's not as much fun. And I've done investigations on the Hill, on the Senate side, and on the House side, and I was one of the attorneys working involved in the impeachment of President Clinton. We didn't prove what he did, but we said it wasn't a high crime or misdemeanor. So that's my profile in a nutshell. So I've reached a point where justice is a coincidence of our current system. It is not a consequence of it. It is a Wild West show. It is an alleyway. And anything goes. And you can win a case, make it a coincidence in the specific case you represent, but you can't make it a habit because people don't know or care about it. They're out there and they don't feel it. And when it comes to doctors and patients and any noise about drugs or narcotics, people's minds shut down. The juries are made for prosecution, but that's not enough. They want a standard of proof that's vague, closer to malpractice. They want to impeach your credibility with similar acts involving nothing to do with your practice. They send in people who pretend to have back pain, which you can't get by imaging necessarily, so you can't always prove by some independent act that a person actually has back pain. And then, ironically, you find sometimes when you image them in preparation for a trial, they do have a problem with their backs. And it is justified to consider the fact that you found an injury for this person who's pretending not to have back pain, who in fact does have it, and has conditions of pain that should be treated by a physician who's doing his or her job. The stuff of logic is, if we're going to go after those who abuse narcotics, whether they're doctors or they're on the street or they're patients, then do that. But do not cut out the opiates for the 40, 80 million people, however many, who need surcease from pain. You know, it was said, Mr. Feldman said, Dr. Feldman said it, you can walk outside and slip. And what he's saying is you may get up. And you may have a pain and you won't know how it's radiating and no one can find it at your doctor's office. And you go to 3 of them and they think you're a drug seeker. You're not a person in pain. And so you accumulate your documents to prove that you're the real thing, that you really have pain. If somebody doesn't do something about it, what are you going to do? I had a man in my office who lifted weights. He tore something in his shoulder. It didn't get fixed. But he had unrelenting pain. And then one day on Thanksgiving, when he was trying to cut meat, the pain was so great in his arm, they just stood there crying, unable to carve the Thanksgiving Day dinner. That's what we're talking about. But no one talks about that. Oh, we're going to take care of the addicts. No, we're not. We're building another empire in the drug establishment. We're pumping people into prisons. We found ways to discriminate again. We found ways to punish people. And why not doctors? Asuncion Luyo is a Filipino woman, a doctor in Florida. I represented her. She went through 3 trials before I met her. She's Filipino. She's about this high. She's a charming lady. And like most doctors, she has an empathy for the patients, and that's why they do it. She's not a suspicious person. That said, there is no proof that she ever gave any person any medication that was not needed and necessary. I had 3 judges in that case that I moved to kick out of the case. and I succeeded. I saw they had this application, and I moved to kick out the judge. And I was thinking, oh, they'll just deny it. They didn't. They ran out of the case. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get a worse one. And I did. I got several worse ones. Finally, I got a judge who was an appellate judge who sat in court, and we had a robust discussion the first time, and then we understood each other. I asked for a hearing on whether or not we could hear the tapes, and if we couldn't hear them, we should exclude them. The government went and spent money on the undercover tape that he came in and said he had this problem and so forth. The agent had said what was on the tape was that she told him, oh, we can do this and we don't have, it doesn't matter if you have pain or not. I didn't know what the tape was going to have on it. We played it in court for the first time, and when I heard it, she gave him good medical advice. She had been through 3 trials. The woman was absolutely, factually, no question about it, innocent. That's what the government is doing. They overcharge, they overstate, they cheat, they lie, they thieve, they steal your liberty, your freedom, your reputation, they crash your whole business. Now, Dr. John Bennett, also from Florida, a really good place for really bad cases, and I basically am admitted to several. I've been admitted over the years to 26 different states in different cases, not just doctor cases. So Dr. John Bennett, they raid his place. Months pass, we find each other, and I say, I've told other doctors what we should do is we should challenge the search. Nobody does. You were talking about lawyers who don't fight. There are two kinds of advocates. There are those who are not advocates. They facilitate, and they're advocates. Lloyd Stryker wrote a great book in the 1920s about if you're going to be a trial lawyer, you're a warrior, or you shouldn't be there. Maybe that's a little bit of my South Bronx coming out, but that's the way I see it. A facilitator, the judge says your client is a blank, and the facilitator turns to the client and says the judge says you're a blank. The advocate says, Your Honor, there's something wrong with you. You're not impartial to the matter. You should be off this case. That is the problem in America. Besides the judges, besides the prosecutor, besides the witnesses, besides the DEA, nobody is fighting. You can't win an argument you don't make. You can't win a fight you don't join. There's a lot of talk in America right now about this and other things, that our leaders need a spine implant. And the indignity you suffer when people do this to you, whether it's racial or it's taking your freedom away in a criminal case or taking your vote away or trying to keep you in America in a legal way when a judge says that you should be permitted to stay under, say, DACA, that you are wrong when you're banning Muslims from coming in the country. There is a lawlessness that I think started on 9/11. We lost our innocence. America hasn't known how to adjust, and it's lost its way. It lost its way in these drug cases before 9/11. Even though the Supreme Court said that DEA agents and the Department of Justice shouldn't be supplanting its medical decisions for the doctor. It shouldn't be substituting for congressional legislation that designated by the very designation that these things were usable for treatment. Congress said one thing, the courts are saying another. The Justice Department is doing much worse. I had a client in Ohio, Dr. Knuckles. He was convicted before he came to the case. He was sentenced to 25 years. I said that the prosecution had introduced all sorts of stuff, he was black, having nothing to do with the case. He had a rifle under his desk. What did that have to do with anything? They claimed that maybe he had cheated on some payments he submitted, but they didn't charge him. So I convinced the court to release him pending appeal. And nobody in that prison had ever seen anybody for any case get out once they were in. We reversed this conviction based on what they called similar acts that were irrelevant, and meaning other bad things that were not charged. And the Supreme Court of Ohio upheld the vacating of his conviction at the appellate level. That's what I'm talking about. That's another device they use. The case that really got me into this stuff was Richard Pay. You may or may not know about him. Richard Pay was a patient. He had terrible pain. And imagine, those of you who know anything about medicine, that he took Percocets, what that does to this part of your body, if you're taking lots of them, and he was, because the pain was just impossible. He was followed by DEA for weeks to see if he was selling these. They never saw a single tablet go to anyone else. They never saw $1 go to him. When they searched his place in another one of these dragnets that they have, all they found was empty tablets, empty boxes, and stuff like that. They prosecuted him 3 times over 10 years. The last time, I didn't do any of those trials either. The last trial, what they did was they said the prescription his doctor gave him was illegal, and therefore he possessed it illegally, and therefore it doesn't matter what his intent was, since he possessed it illegally, and it was a quantity such that if you took the weight of the entire Percocet, rather than the minuscule amount that is an opiate, that it presumes that you were trafficking, which has a mandatory minimum of 25 years. Now, is that justice? I don't think so. And so he was convicted of that, and I was recruited by Siobhan to take on the case Siobhan Reynolds, just like 2 weeks before the argument. And I stayed up the night before, not because I was anxious about appearing. You might guess I'm pretty comfortable talking. But because I couldn't decide which way to go. On the one hand, there was an argument like one of the ones I just made. On the other hand, the question was, is it constitutional to punish a person for their status as a patient, as a person who is ill? Isn't that a violation of the Eighth Amendment, which is cruel and unusual punishment?
I'd say so.
Yes, and the Supreme Court said so in Robinson against California in the 60s. And so I decided that that was going to be my argument. And the three-judge panel, the chief judge was a former prosecutor, and he was so proud of the fact that he was a prosecutor. He held sessions teaching prosecutors, and he continued to talk about the scourge of drugs. So when I got up before him, instead of emphasizing my lefty roots, I said to him, you and I, when we were prosecutors, we would never prosecute this case. Because this is a shame and a disgrace. And it's a shame and a disgrace because he's being punished because he's ill, not because he did anything. And he is sitting in prison now, and in 2 days they're giving him a morphine pump that far exceeds the amount of drugs that you're prosecuting him for, and you're keeping him in prison on a mandatory minimum. And
Excuse me,
wrong and unjust and unconstitutional.
Excuse me, Dr. Myers, a lot of us travel long distances to come and speak, and it looks like we're not going to be able to speak.
Okay.
And I'd appreciate either
Well, I'd be glad
deciding
wrap
to,
up.
you know, keep
Okay.
these to a minimum, or else we can head out.
Go ahead and wrap up, my friend. Sorry.
Well, I think the instruction is obvious. The system is not working. We need reform. We need to distinguish at the least between opiates that are abused and doctors who are doing their job, and we're not. And I think that we should take to heart what Yeats once wrote, that for it's a curse to the Irish to dream things the world has never seen. And we must feel like that now, that we can't see things as they are. And I think that we should take this as a charge to make a difference. Too many years have passed since I was a young prosecutor to now in which we've allowed this to happen. And we have to reform the entire system. And it'll make a difference to those doctors and patients who need pain medication. Thank you very much.
This time we're going to have Nita Thompson, advocate founder of the World Sickle Cell Federation, and also for the humane treatment of people with sickle cell, to talk about the crisis of the patients in this country who are sickle cell, not able to get adequate treatment because of hysteria opioid crisis. Nita?
Thank you. I'm going to stay seated. I had an accident on March 20th of last year. I have six discs that I need surgery on, and I do have nerve pain, but my pain does not compare to sickle cell pain. The way to right wrongs is to turn the light on truth upon them. Ida B. Wells. The state of sickle cell is absolutely horrible. Those diagnosed are dying, and it seems that nobody cares and nobody's listening. Although, finally this year, the Sickle Cell Treatment Act was passed in the House. We've been asking for that to be since 2009. It's in the state, it's in the Senate right now, but it doesn't mean it will be passed. But I want to let you know something that doctors are doing. The CDC opioid guidelines from 2016 says what to do in regards of sickle cell. It says, and they saved it till last, number 46, it's a few pages down, but it doesn't look like anybody read it or cared to follow up when they were explaining that exactly what it was. So here it is. In addition, given the challenges of managing the painful complications of sickle cell disease, readers are referred to the NIH Evidence-Based Management of Sickle Cell Disease Expert Panel Report for Management of Sickle Cell Disease. Again, that's under number 46. But the doctors straight out refuse to even look at it, although they say they know all about it. And the CDC reps and DEA reps said they knew the doctors would respond the way they are, but they're not fixing it. My name is Nita Thompson, and I'm a sickle cell educator and advocate. I advocate for patients all over the world, but right now I'm going to talk about America. People go to the emergency room and the doctors say, you're a hospital hopper because you were at this other hospital. Although they did nothing for the patient. The patient said, I don't want to die, so I'm going to go to another hospital to be treated. They can now see on the screen when you go from one hospital to another. So our people get labeled. If the doctor would do their due diligence, they would see there's a reason for them to actually be there. Oftentimes, the doctors say, oh, nothing's wrong with you. You're just want to get high. So I'm not even going to check your vitals. I'm not going to do a blood test on you. You have to leave the hospital. Our patients are going home to die. They die in Ubers. They die on bus benches. That's why we are here to take a stand, and I, again, do represent nationally and internationally. For people that talk to me outside of the country, I tell them, don't come here yet. We are not ready. We're treated like third world countries here in America when it comes to sickle cell. So the other thing the doctor and nurses do is say, oh, you're a frequent flyer. You're back in here.
Yep.
But just think, if you don't get treated correctly, you're discharged. But they yet bill the insurance, but the patient has not been treated correctly.
Fraud.
They then have to go back in because they're afraid that they're going to die. Our people diagnosed with sickle cell have said they're tired online of posting RIH, RIP. We need to do something. We need to make sure Senate Bill 2465 actually passes. So a person will go in the hospital and say, I'm in a sickle cell crisis. They tell them, okay, go sit down. Sickle cell needs to be treated quickly. And one of the main reasons is, and the difference between a normal pain patient and a sickle cell patient, if they don't control the pain, the person will die. Straight out die. And here's why. First of all, when somebody doesn't treat a person who's in a sickle cell pain, it's like this, a wall, and no oxygen can get on the other side. When no oxygen can get on that side, that area is killed in the person's body for the remainder of their lifetime.
CO2 buildup. Yeah.
So what happens is they've now created chronic pain along with the acute pain. The CDC guidelines focuses on chronic pain, but yet the doctors are treating acute pain as if it's chronic pain. 0.5 milligram of Dilaudid is something maybe we could take if you're not diagnosed with sickle cell, and it would stop your pain. But for a sickle cell patient, it does absolutely nothing. It's an insult. Now, there are two reasons people diagnosed with sickle cell need a large quantity of opioid. One is because of the way it metabolizes in their bodies, and it's just straight out, it goes to the liver. So a lot of that pain med that they put in does not go through the body and focus on the pain. The other reason is that doctors have been correct and given dosages to our people, but they need larger dosages because they have more challenges within their body, and their body has sort of become immune to the normal dose that they had received. So 2 milligrams for a person diagnosed with sickle cell of Dilaudid may not stop, but it can take the edge off. What's happening is our doctors are not giving correct medicine, so it keeps the patient in the hospital longer. Personally, sickle cell seems to be the cash cow of the medical community because they are born into medical treatment until there is a cure. And there is a cure, but America, the majority of people don't know about it. I put these out on the table. Cord blood. After a person births their child, they can actually actually donate that cord blood to a public bank. And it can not only not help sickle cell, but it can cure cancers, leukemias, AIDS, and for our veterans that come back and they have an arm or leg blown up, it can actually grow their muscle so they can wear a prosthetic. But it seems like nobody cares because nobody's telling anybody this. There are free public banks and it doesn't cost a dime. But here are some of the untruths are the sickle cell knots. My friend Dana Thompson made these. Dana died 2 months ago. Dr. Nahar in Los Angeles outlived most of his patients and died, and Dana was one of the first. So it took 20 years for this new sickle cell treatment, and it's only the second in America, only the second treatment, and it's glutamine. But Dr. Nahara also understands that's what was taken out of the person diagnosed with sickle cell when both parents pass on the gene, and is replaced by valine. And valine is what makes the blood sickle. So I thought also, more glutamine in, and then it would counteract the valine, and you wouldn't have so many crises. There's a drug called hydroxyurea. Doctors don't understand it. I have doctors telling me that hydroxyurea is a cure for sickle cell. It will stop the sickle cell experience. That is incorrect. It can create fewer sickle cell crises because it gives more fetal hemoglobin. The baby blood is what seems to make you not have so many crises. But again, it does not stop. The other thing is that the Red Cross actually has blue tag blood. The Red Cross refuses to have blue tag blood nationally. And what that is about 55% of African Americans have a negative CEK blood in their body. And they can help people diagnose. But nobody's willing to tell people why donations need to be and need to come from African Americans for African Americans. But in the same token, Hispanics for Hispanics, white for white, and Asian for Asian. The blood is like that because it's a better match. Each race has a type of protein in the blood. If we get blood from somebody without that protein, we can actually reject it. Blood transfusions is a prescription for many people diagnosed with sickle cell. If they don't get the blood, they die. But for a doctor to check the patient's blood as soon as they get the blood transfusion, and then when you kick the patient out by saying, well, your blood looks great, you're not in a sickle cell crisis. That's wrong, but that's what's happening. The people can go into shock afterwards, and actually the blood transfusion only works for a certain limited time to have a lot of the quote-unquote non-sickle cells in the body, but the blood transfusion by itself does not stop a sickle cell crisis. Doctors saying, oh, you don't have any crisis because the blood work says you don't. That is wrong, and that's a lie. The point is, though, a lot of the doctors are hospitalists, and they don't know sickle cell. They're far from professionals. They're far from experts about sickle cell. But the doctors refuse to talk to the patient's doctor. They refuse to listen to the patient's family member, or the advocate. And therefore, the patient dies because the doctor is going to try to stop a pain crisis by giving low doses of medicine. And they again say they're not going to lose their medical license to give a sickle cell patient opioid. But I just read to you what the CDC said. They say the CDC says I can't give you narcotics. But that's a lie. And we need help with the doctors to understand that definitely. Just read and you'll know. But they won't. Research. Now here's one for you. The very first person in America to give gene therapy, which they did in France, and they have cured sickle cell through gene therapy. What they actually do is take the bone marrow and they manipulate it so the bone marrow no longer makes sickle cells. But here's the thing, the very first person was done in California, a very young African-American young lady. The doctors were so arrogant, they thought they could do it on their own to invent the wheel when it was already invented. Now, after a failed attempt in which they didn't even tell our sickle cell patient that it didn't work, she's at UCLA. And when she goes in, the emergency room doctors treat her so bad. They don't give her the pain that she needs, and her condition was worsened by the doctors for that research study. And finally, the cocky people have to humble themselves and ask the people in France to show them exactly what was done. We get no respect. We, as a sickle cell community, do all we can to make a difference. We participate in the research study. But when a person won't tell you the truth as it failed, and the patient's having complications, and finally they have to press upon the team to actually tell them that it didn't work. That's not fair and that's not right. Yes?
Bottom line, Ms. Thompson, as you wrap it up, is the fact tell me about the opioid crisis, the hysteria of the opioid crisis leading to an increased death rate for sickle cell patients, because a lot of these ERs put up signs, we do not treat with opioids. So if a patient has a sickle cell crisis, and as you heard, the National Institutes of Health says you must give these patients opioids in high enough doses to take their pain away and titrate down oxygen and hydration. If these sickle cell African American, mostly patients in this country, do not get proper treatment, what is the death rate in terms of Los Angeles? I believe is the worst death rate in the country. Would you let everybody know what the rate of life expectancy now? What it used to be before the opioid quote-unquote crisis, and what it is now?
Nationally, it was 48 years old for women, 42 years old for men. Before the opioid incident, in California it was 30. The life expectancy has gone down even from 35 for women and 32 for men. One other point is the Dilaudid issue. There is no Dilaudid, quote unquote. Our patients are over here, the nurses say, oh no, they're sickle cell. We're saving Dilaudid for cancer patients. Sickle cell is and does meet the requirements for palliative care, but nobody cares and nobody's doing it. It's now so that it's about 30 years old and in the 20s now. Our people between 18 and 35 are dying, several a day and several throughout the states. And again, it seems like nobody cares. So that's why we need people to understand. You all here understand that sickle cell disease is not just a black disease. It's in every race. And we need help because our people are dying. They're scared to go to the hospital for the type of treatment they get, which is no treatment at all. They're just called names and junkies. And believe me, they are drug seekers. So I don't mind telling people that because of the amount of pain they're in. It's excruciating. It's like glass going through your veins. It's worse pain than my nerve pain. It's horrible. And our people are dying because it seems like people don't care or care to read. Thank you.
At this time, we'll call Dr. Thomas Klein, MD, Rare Disease Specialist and Researcher. Dr. Klein, you can speak from down there if you like.
Yes, I'm a primary care physician. I'm not attached to anything. I don't get money from drug companies. I'm not looking for grants. I just have a primary care practice. And I target people, my patients are people with chronic disease. So I see lots and lots of people with long-term disease. Some need pain medicine, some not. You need to understand that the match that lit this forest fire was the assumption that doctors are prescribing too much medicine and it is leading to more overdose deaths. That's not true. The reason it's not true is the number of prescriptions we write in the United States is governed by the DEA. The DEA only allows us to write a single prescription and no refills. In Canada, if I write a prescription for a pain medicine, I put down refill times 3. That's 1 prescription. In the US, there's 3. That's why we have more prescriptions written. Period. Now, what about all this death rate? The word, the adjective that's always left off, overdose death, that sounds like what, Marilyn Monroe, overdose death? The adjective that's always left off is street overdose deaths. These are people dying in the streets. These are not people dying in communities. 95% of people who are dying in the streets are dying from multiple drugs and alcohol. The CDC takes a person who comes in with an autopsy and they have alcohol, cocaine, and a prescription opiate. Guess what? Those are 3 different deaths. So when the CDC reports that there are this many prescription drug deaths, it does not tell you that they were only involved. If a person comes to autopsy and they got 5 drugs in their body, nobody knows what they died from. The CDC just took back its death rates. Everybody knows that, right? All right, been cut in half. So what's the impact of the original argument? We write too many prescriptions and we cause too many deaths. Both those statistics are wrong. So what we have is an epidemic of ignorance and fear. In this country, the government and the politicians and the general population are afraid of opium products because it goes back a long way with morals and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to stop for a minute, and because all you staffers are here, I'm just, a doctor. I'm not trying to pass legislation. I'm just telling you what the story is. And it is really bad out there. This forest fire has ruined healthcare. There are 6 to 7 million people in this country. That's about 2% of your populations, by the way, in each one of your states, who have no doctor to take care of them for their rare chronic diseases. People who have long-term diseases have rare diseases, real diseases, arachnoiditis, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, complex regional pain disease. These are diseases most doctors don't even know about. So the doctors have bought into the fact that, oh my God, we're writing too many prescriptions and causing these people to die. We just better back off. So check the logic out, even if their statistics were correct. If I prescribe too many pills to people, how is that affecting people dropping dead in the streets? It's not. And Janelle is with us today we're both from North Carolina, and she is a pain patient, and I thought if you staffers want to ask questions of either myself from a medical standpoint or Janelle Eljaway from the standpoint of a person with CRPS, what I just said, complex regional pain, shoot, feel free. We're here for you.
Dr. Klein, can you clarify something for me? How is it that the CDC would report deaths from opioid overdose and make 50 mistakes on the reporting, leading to a lie that doctors are responsible for all these deaths when the CDC admitted 2 weeks ago that they didn't tell the truth?
Well, I have no idea.
They reported and blame us. Well, not us.
They said their algorithm was wrong. They got the algorithm wrong.
And I would like these congressional staffers to please take back to your bosses. How is it the CDC can make a 50% mistake in the reporting of deaths blamed on doctors for opioid overdoses? You need to investigate them. Clap, come on.
Dr. Myers and Dr. Klein, they actually admitted it in December 29th of 2016. Again,
50% of the deaths they claim on doctors' prescriptions, they admitted they were in error.
Okay, when the CDC steps out of line, they are not the regulatory agency to be making any comments about prescription drugs. That's only the FDA. The FDA turned down all of the tenets that the guidelines are based on. Turned them down with their scientific review. The CDC went ahead under the director, Thomas Frieden, who publicly stated that pain pills were nothing more than heroin pills. And I don't know why they did it, but that's why we're here. I think one of the finest democratic institutions we have are the congressional hearings. And these people need to go before Congress and explain themselves. Why did you do this? Why are you making up this stuff? There's so much in there. There's so much in there that's wrong. Why are you stepping out of your regulatory bounds? So anyway, both of us are, Janelle and myself, happy to answer more questions.
At this time, Janelle, would you like to make a statement and let the staffers know your availability as a chronic pain patient?
Sure. My name is Janelle Elgaway. I am 40 years old, and I've dealt with rare and painful diseases for the last 24 years. I've always loved playing sports. I was a huge adrenaline junkie. I won a spot to try out for the Junior Olympics for field hockey. And a week before tryouts, everything was almost taken away. As I drove home from softball practice, I was rear-ended by a truck going 55 miles an hour. I was life-flighted, put to a hospital, and found out I broke my C3, C4 vertebrae. With a lot of hard work and physical therapy, I would go on to recover, and I won a spot on the B squad in the 1996 Olympics. I also won an athletic scholarship to The Ohio State University. After college, I worked for a private law enforcement firm, and I owned a business flipping houses. And then in 2003, I was in another car accident. I was briefly paralyzed in my left arm and hand, and I needed emergency surgery in my neck. I would go on from then until now to have 5 total neck surgeries. I'm fused from my C3 to C7. I have 4 rods in my C6-7, and I had a laminectomy. Wow. I have degenerative disc disease, Raynaud's disease, PTSD, complex regional pain syndrome, fibromyalgia, and most recently, tachycardia. I cannot have children because of my disabilities. I'm a perfect example of someone that is overall healthy despite my neck issues and my diseases, and how the body reacts to someone with long-term out-of-control pain. 2 years ago, I was lowered off 2/3 of my medications, my pain medication. I was on these medications for 15 years. I started having blackouts, constant flare-ups, out-of-control pain, and then I started having tachycardia. I have an internet talk show also, and my health got so bad that I wasn't able to work anymore because I couldn't, my memory was terrible, I was bedridden. I had a heart monitor for 24 hours on, and while I was sleeping at 3 a.m., my heart rate went from 60 to 150. And I could have had a sudden heart attack or stroke. My primary care doctor and my cardiologist both said that I needed to find a way to get my pain under control, but they didn't want to do anything for it. My pain management doctor wanted to continue with the treatments and medications that were not working. And I consider myself extremely lucky because I was able to find a rare disease specialist, and he decided to put me back on my pain medication that I was previously on. Within 8 weeks, my tachycardia was almost non-existent. My blackouts rarely happen now. My memory is back. I can wake up and be productive again. My flare-ups are less often, and I'm able to keep my pain under control for the most part. I mean, it still happens, but you know. Again, I am one of the lucky ones, which is why I'm here to speak on behalf of the 26 million or so intractable pain patients. I'm here for the patients that have committed suicide. I'm here for the patients that have turned to street drugs and can possibly die because they don't know what's in these drugs. I'm here for the patients living in pure hell and agony because they have been tapered against their will or completely have taken off their medications, and now they are just miserable. These are the three options that the 26 million people have or are about to have if we don't get help. There are around 110 million chronic pain patients in the United States, and examples of this is like somebody with arthritis or back pain. There are 26 million of us intractable pain patients, like myself, that deal with non-cancerous painful diseases or health issues where shots, therapies, basically everything has been tried, and pain medication is a must that is able to break this, along with other treatments and medications, to have any hopes of quality of life. Did you know that today 5 to 6 million of these intractable pain patients have been completely taken off their medications or tapered due to the reductions because of the CDC guidelines? If you're concerned about overdoses and addiction, why focus on patients that have safely taken their medications for years? I've been on my medications now for 15 plus years. I am not going to overdose, and I'm not going to be an addict. There is less than 2% of addicts in the United States. This number has not changed in the last 60 years. That's under 2 million addicts within the US. Did you know that the CDC guidelines were created mainly by addiction specialists? There was not one doctor or specialist on that panel that treated or studied pain management or had dealt with rare diseases or health issues concerning pain. So listen up, policymakers. There is nothing we could do about the past, but we can work on the now. If you're concerned about overdoses and addiction, making the CDC guidelines into law, it will not work. Having the DEA raid doctors' offices and shutting them down and taking away their licenses does not work. Tapering patients off their meds and lowering them to the CDC guidelines of 90 MME, which is morphine milligram equivalent, does not work. Your current policies are creating more overdoses, your current policies are creating more street drug use, and your current policies are creating more deaths and suicides. Patients are not a one-size-fits-all. If you have a 300-pound Marine and a 110-pound woman and place them both on the same MMEs, that just doesn't make sense. I have a few suggestions for solutions. Number one, lawmakers, do not create any new laws or policies with data used from the CDC. As Dr. Klein mentioned, we now know that the CDC data is flawed and manipulated. The CDC recently admitted this, that they inflated the overdose numbers, and the CDC should be held accountable, and Congress should hold a hearing so we can find out what happened and why these numbers occurred even. Number two, the CDC guidelines should be revoked and instead use the Federation of State Medical Board guidelines. That was written by doctors and medical boards specializing in pain management. Number three, doctors should be given reimbursements as a palliative care visit instead of an office visit. Many states now accept this, and doctors need to use the palliative care certificate and exemptions. This will allow doctors to prescribe pain medication over the CDC guidelines of 90 MME. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, or the CMS, plan to use the CDC guidelines, which has no scientific studies supporting that the CDC's 90 MME or the CMS's 200 MME levels are dangerous and can cause overdose and addiction for intractable pain patients. The CDC proposed a scientifically unsupported threshold of opioid abuse risk at 90 MME. Again, there are no studies to support this. And in fact, the FDA scientists did a study finding out that there is no difference of pain between cancer and non-cancerous pain. Number four, we could fund programs to help build institutions like what the VA has and institutions that are being set up all over the world right now to take care of patients properly through multidisciplinary programs. Let's be real about the limitations on alternative therapies. Hardly anyone provides them. Insurance doesn't cover them. There are no treatment plans set up to help patients if taken off their pain medications. Because I know a lot of people often say, we'll do alternative things. They're out there, but our insurance doesn't cover them. And most of us that are on disability, we can't afford those. Number five, fund better education for physicians on long-term patient care concerning pain, rare diseases, and chronic issues. And number six, stop trade embargo in Mexico and China until they deal with their illegal trade of illicit manufactured fentanyl. Because that's what we have right now. This is not an opioid epidemic. It It may have been back in 96, 97 or whatever, but now it is an illicit manufactured fentanyl issue. And that's poison, basically. Did you know that when chronic pain patients use their medications properly, addiction is almost non-existent? Again, intractable pain patients cannot be dealt with in a one-size-fits-all manner. We are not going to suddenly become addicts, and we're not going to overdose after years of safely being on our medications. We need to let the doctors treat and prescribe for their patients how they deem fit. No one is immune to becoming sick like this, and I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. This could be your daughter, your son, your grandkids. This could be you. Don't we all deserve the best quality of life and to have the opportunities to receive the best levels of health care? What is currently going on does not work. This is a simple problem with a simple solution. We need to allow patients to have access to the correct medications and treatments that they need to live. There is no playbook on how to deal with life when it's suddenly turned upside down and inside out. And we just want the opportunity to live and to be a productive citizen of the United States. And I'm just asking for your help, and on behalf of the 26 million people out there, to give us the opportunity to live and to have a quality of life again. Thank you.
Before I introduce Matthew Fogg, our U.S. former Deputy U.S. Marshal, retired from U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, Group Supervisor. You mentioned the suicide rate. Can you briefly let the staffers here know, because we're not talking about the veterans. I want to make sure that they understand that we're losing 20 veterans a day because they can't get adequate pain treatment at the VA hospitals and clinics. Can you talk about the horrendous suicide rate now that chronic pain patients who are opioid non-abusers, veterans who will not be able to get pain treatment now in the VA hospital systems that have experienced? Can you make a comment on that before we introduce Matthew Fogg?
Janelle and I have worked on this together. We don't know how many people are killing themselves, but we do know there are 30 who have killed themselves directly as a result of having their medicines taken away from them. And these cases we have on file on Twitter, which you can access by Googling medium suicides Kline, K-L-I-N-E. Those 3 words will get you to the suicide list. We also have a new suicide coming up each month that we're adding to the list. We have a new one apparently out of Syracuse, New York, a National Football League player who had his medicines reduced and he killed himself. Very few people on the list kill themselves with opiate medications. Why? They were taken off. So they kill themselves with violent means. This is a real problem. People are trying to brush this under the carpet and say, oh, these are just anecdotal cases. What else could they be? These are not anecdotal human lives. And the other part, people like Janelle, is ruining people's lives in general. But the suicides are a very real thing. We don't know totals because if you do commit suicide by taking pills, you're chalked up as an overdose death rather than a suicide. So, but it's happening, and it's happening every single month.
Thank you, Dr. Kline. At this time, we'll have some words from Dr. Matthew Fogg, who is in law enforcement, his experience, because one of the things we're concerned about, staffers, is we need the investigation by the Department of Justice, by the U.S. Congress, for what's going on with the prosecution, physicians, and everything you're hearing today. Mr. Fogg, you can give us your comments from where you are.
Because I really do have to go, right?
Okay. All right, go ahead. This is,
I'm sorry, my name is
Leslie Gregory. You want to make your comments?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you.
Sorry.
I'm a primary care PA in Oregon, and I just wanted to make my comments because I have to leave very shortly. I want to tell you about a patient of mine who's a black vet. He does not have chronic pain. He has a cyclic vomiting syndrome, the remedy of which is a 8 milligram or more dose of Dilaudid so that it will stop the vomiting in his lower esophageal sphincter.
He has had this disease for so long. He's a vet, remember. He is double covered. This man is a pillar of this community. He mentors young children. He attends the church and takes those children into his home. He is raising 2 grandchildren so their parents can work. Now, this man has chronic cyclic vomiting syndrome, and he has to appear in the emergency department for this high dose of Dilaudid, or the bottom of his esophagus will rupture and he will bleed out. He has also had so much strain on his heart from leaving him in these emergency rooms that he now has an implanted cardiac device to keep his heart from dying from this chronic and long-acting pain. This man is double covered. This is not about poverty. He's very intelligent. He mentors children. He's a wonderful person. It's been well documented. When he became my patient, I sent his entire medical record to the workup, with the workup, to local ER docs for his protection, especially since his syndrome has so damaged his heart. Any one of these next cycles could be his last. Okay, I just need that to be made very clear. Okay, despite this, he has been made to languish for sometimes hours in emergency department hallways, praying that each retching fit won't be his last since his food pipe has been so damaged. Any next one could bleed out. Whether his suffering is due to racism or chronic pain patient discrimination, this is what I came to discuss with you today. He deserves, and we can and must do better. So that's the first point I want to make. My second point is, nearly 3 years ago, I wrote to CDC to ask them why racism was not declared a threat to public health, having met their own 4 criteria. Their response was not only dismissive and unsatisfactory, but they included an offer that if I wanted to volunteer to help them, I should contact them back. Okay, these are people making 6 figures. They wanted to know if I would volunteer to help them.
Trillion people in their agency.
I am pleased to announce that after many years of campaigning, the county in which I practice in Oregon has been the first to declare racism a public health issue. And this was last week. Okay, so another reason why I have to leave immediately, and I appreciate your forbearance again. Reassured that the ground has not opened up, the sun continues to shine, and an apocalypse has not come to pass, I request that since it is a national institutional problem, CDC reconsider and that august body report back to Congress and DHHS to do so. Finally, and in the words of my father, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. I offer the work of my nonprofit, Right to Health, and a prototype made successful by my mother, an RN and a Master's of Education in Public Health Promotion, whom I must leave immediately after this meeting. She's buried after 88 years of working to remit these atrocious health disparities. She has finally passed on her baton. It is important to note that based on recent polling, this is 2017, that the latest graduating class from the University of Virginia graduating medical students showed that 75% of these graduating medical students believe that black people feel pain differently than white people. This is 2017. Okay, we can see that this is a problem that is not confined to the Pacific Northwest. Further, and living in each corner of our country and born in the Midwest, I can attest that this issue is a national issue and will require a national solution, which I offer you today. The work of my nonprofit has built on my mother's work, and it has been proven. There are data accumulated from her work still being utilized in the Midwest today. What I am saying to all of you, and I would please, if there's anyone from Oregon, please identify yourself. Contact me. I am available at Right to Health, that's numeral 2, us.org, right2healthus.org. We have data and it works. Please contact me. Sign our petition to CDC, which is do your job. One other thing, and I want to be very brief. I just came from the CDC's forum on opiate addiction, and it was literally from 10 to noon in the Humphrey building. They had a pharmacist who stood up and said his patients are getting their medications and it's being reported to DOJ. DOJ Why is this not being reported to the medical boards? Why is this not being reported to the clinical authorities that have sway over this? It is because these patients are being directly targeted by criminal and law enforcement agencies, not and the clinicians writing the prescription, not by medical boards, not by people who have the clinical background to adequately address these issues. Why? Why? And I will tell you, at the conference, just as I was leaving, at which Dr. Christopher Lynn, the head of CDC, was there. I had been trying to contact him for a year. It is a perfect example of what David Williams, he has been touted as the nation's authority on public health from the T.H. Chan Harvard Med School Public Health, who has said that this is about racism. And it is about time we listen to these national authorities on public health when they come out with this. He offered to write a letter on my behalf. Dr. Kamara Jones is making the same argument. We have to listen to our highest trained clinical professionals who are telling CDC this is a matter of public and national health security. So we are just asking, please do your job. Go back to your legislators and tell them this is a public health crisis. It is not being handled by the Department of Justice. It needs to be handled by CDC. Thank you very much.
Leslie, before you go, I know you've spoken to your two senators and congressmen from Oregon. You made the request that they investigate the Department of Justice on these issues?
Correct.
Okay, because it seems though to me that CDC is a waste of time. Congress needs to investigate.
Correct.
Well, I personally invited them here today, and they're supposed to be here. And obviously,
CDC is a waste of time.
Well, that's basically what I'm saying.
They need to get the Congress needs to investigate what we're talking about today.
Yes, right.
And I now take this time for Matthew Fall to come before us. Thank you, Leslie. Matthew Fall again is a former Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal and retired former U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration Group Supervisor. Mr. Fall, will you tell us some things about your experience in terms of the DEA?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Miles. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here, happy to testify. I'm a retired, I'm retired Chief Deputy United States Marshal. But one of the things that I kind of put together a testimony, I like sometimes sound bites that I want to throw at you, because the fact that being in law enforcement, a lot of times people wouldn't expect these things to take place in an organization that's supposed to be held with the highest integrity. When you talk about the U.S. Department of Justice, you talk about the chief law enforcement organization in the world almost, to be honest. So my experience of 32 years of being in law enforcement covered a myriad of things, but the biggest thing that affected my career, and I said, despite some of the highest DOJ accolades I received from exemplary service above and beyond the call of duty, in the end, my career and life was seriously jeopardized doing a job-related stakeout and heavily armed fugitives, and I was later fired because of rampant racism in the U.S. Marshals and the DOJ. A federal judge wrote in the jury's verdict at trial, and he said, it was Title VII trial that I went to. I won, I prevailed, got my job back. Jury awarded me $4 million. And it made me a Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal. But in that process of going through the racism, that case started in 1985, and it is still active today. So my point that I want to make, and the judge said, the jury obviously inferred from the endemic environment of racial disharmony and mistrust that all explanations are suspect and that occult racism was more likely than any other for false misadventures in the Marshal Service hierarchy. Now, I didn't agree with his characterization of misadventures, but it sounded like a Tom Sawyer movie. You know, it was way beyond misadventures. But the reality of it is it said, before this, I witnessed firsthand disproportionate targeting and prosecution of African Americans. As a government agent, I came to realize I played a role in this hostile racial process, just like any other black slave hunter or Native American scout during the dark ages of building this nation. I will never forget the words of the special agent in charge of the DEA when I asked, Why does it appear that most of our drug cases are targeting urban areas endemic to black citizens? He said, we need to justify our existence. And we go into more affluent neighborhoods. Right. And we go into more affluent neighborhoods with the same tenacity and pursuit for justice. Those citizens know powerful politicians, good lawyers and judges, and they will shut down operations, scrutinize our arrests, deduct from our budgets, and interpose your overtime and excitement in law enforcement. That's what he's telling me. He said, yes. And then I said to him, if we must go, we must get our arrest numbers up and prove we are fighting this war on drugs, but not make it an equal opportunity enforcement operation, then we are practicing ethnic cleansing in predominantly black areas. And there we sit. And here we sit today, by George. I put this, by George, here we sit today. All social justice statistics depict that black Americans are actually racially profiled, charged, prosecuted, incarcerated disproportionately way more than their white counterparts who are violating the same exact laws. Everybody understands that, right? We look at all the stats today. As a matter of fact, what makes it even worse is that throughout my career, I specifically recall that every major law enforcement entity, such as the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, Alcohol, Tobacco and Farm, DEA, Secret Service, and more, to include most major city, state police departments with black law enforcement employees and civilians are involved in systemic class action complaints. Furthermore, in April 1998, when I won my major title race discrimination case in front of the court with claims dating back to 1985, the jury found in the U.S. Marshal Service to be a racial hostile environment for all of its African-American deputy United States Marshals. Now, amazingly enough, today, this is the day, I'm not talking about back in 85. Today, I am the class agent representing over 500 black U.S. Marshals dating back to 1994. See Matthew Falk versus Jeff Sessions. So what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the course of my litigation, and the class action extends from 85 to present. That covers 33 years and 10 United States Attorney Generals. This absolutely validates this hostile environment to black employees, and even worse, against citizens that we spoke to serve and protect. The doctors gathered here are 110% correct to not only realize that the Department of Justice and others are targeting them by virtue of their statistical data, but to also understand that racism within the rank and file of law enforcement, they clearly it exists in whatever goods and services we offer and mandate to the public. You guys understand what I'm saying? If I'm fighting a bigot with a badge working next to me, you know what he's going to do to a doctor and anybody else out there in the prosecutions. And this stuff runs not just with, when I say law enforcement, I'm not just talking about people such as myself, the agents and stuff, but the prosecutors who back us up and the judges. This stuff goes all the way through, and everybody looks and sees and says, "Whoa, look at these disparities. Look at this stuff. Something's wrong here." But nobody wants to do anything about it. So what happens is Matthew Falk said, "I'm going to step up." And when I stepped in, my black partner out of New York stepped up, and my white partner out of New York and Jewish out of New York stepped up. Our careers, not only was our career destroyed, my black partner winds up dead. Somebody runs his car off the road and breaks his neck while he was even in the midst of trying to prove this stuff, and we were going through the process. So even the New York Post did a front page story on us. Bigots with badges. Now let me tell you, in 1997, for a newspaper to say, take the U.S. Marshal's badge, and on the front page with bigots with badges against the Justice Department, they had to have some serious, excuse the expression, gonads. Because I'm telling you here and now, you don't go against that department and something doesn't suddenly happen to you or things begin to change in your life. But I had to continue on moving forward. Now, there were a lot of people that are afraid. And what I want you to understand, see, we're whistleblowers. Matter of fact, everybody up here is probably a whistleblower, I would say, because we're pointing out things that the world needs, that this system needs to understand and know. But once you start to open your mouth, it's all of the fallout that happens. Now, I had a great career, all of the things. You had came to that trial just in 1998, and you had heard all the things that were said about me. So the jury, one jury, matter of fact, even when it was over, the jury, white jury, she hugs me because the judge said, well, the jury's out, and they said, we talked to Mr. Parker, Judge said, sure, travel, I'm talking. They were hugging me, they was excited. One white juror, she said, you know, Mr. Parker, I want to tell you something. She said, you made a believer out of me. She said, because I'm going to tell you something, I thought people filed these type of cases because they're just trying to get money out of you. I'm thinking to myself, I would have robbed the bank first. That's okay, but that's what her thought was, her mindset. But she said, you made her believe. She said, I am so glad you went the distance. She said, I just want you to know something. She said, they were back there saying, give you $5 million. She said, I was like, you need to give this man $10 million or more for what he has been through. See, she understood it, but most of the other jurors were black, and they said, well, we don't want to be over-excessive, I guess, in their assessment. But the bottom line was the fact that she saw this, and she said, I was so just disheartened when I heard that this is our Justice Department doing this stuff. This is coming from the top down. See, I wasn't in a local police department. I was in a federal organization where prosecutors and people, you know, like my good friend here, Flannery, we talking prosecutors, we talking about the highest levels. And when you're talking about, you see this stuff and you don't do anything about it, and trust me, prosecutors, judges, they all see it. They see the racism. And when the judge said it called racism, they understood it. So, you know, I got to thinking here. Now, here's John Comey, for the FBI, former FBI director. He's saying, you know, I tried to do my job and do my job properly, and I got fired for it. I'm thinking to myself, welcome aboard the Enterprise. You know, because I'm saying, you know, what you should have done was you should have spoke out long before now. What did you say about the DNA analysis when this DNA analysis showed that they were disproportionately targeting people of color? And when they got it straight, when they went back and fixed the DNA analysis situation and exonerated all these people, they did nothing in the state and locals where all these people still remain locked up today because of faulty DNA analysis. So what we're saying here is if you've got a Justice Department that is doing these things, certainly Dr. Myers and the doctors that are here today are correct on their assessment that there is a problem in this department and they're not addressing it, and that problem, the elephant in the room is racism, which Leslie Gregory just said. That's the problem, and when we address it and we bring it out, it seems that nobody wants to do anything about it. That's the only reason why this case could be last as long as it has, and now we're talking about here it is, 30-something years later, all the money spent, all the litigation, and now we got a class action that's in discovery that currently right now carries over 500 black U.S. Marshals and more. We're talking about a Justice Department that is faulty. We talk about the FBI, all of the problems that fall under. If you've got a class action complaint, that means there's issues in your department of racism, and you can guarantee those same bigots are going to step out on the street and harm our citizens. Now, some people come up and they say, well, Paul, you can't throw all police under the bus. You can't throw, and I'm not throwing all police under the bus. I just want to know, it's just like if you're in a stadium and somebody walks up and somebody says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, they get on a PA system and they says, you know what? We got 100,000 people here and we know all of you guys are good, but we got a couple of bad cops in here. We don't know what they're going to do. I guarantee everybody's going to go home. The problem is when they say all cops aren't bad, I'm not concerned about the good ones. I'm concerned about the bad ones and who's not speaking out against those bad cops, because as the NRA says, it takes a good guy with a gun to deal with a bad guy with a gun. It takes a good cop to deal with a bad cop. We know who they are. Our concern is if I say something about it, what's going to happen in my career? So they make an example out of people like myself. Good cops who've got great careers, all my accolades, everything. It's amazing that I'm standing here talking to you today because they left me on the stake out to die in Baltimore. The white guys pulled out and left me. And instead of the manager backing me up, he said, well, Fogg, after we made the arrest, they caught these guys and they were heavily armed. You know what he said to me? He said, Fogg, I know it was they left. He said, look, we just let bygones be bygones. You see, letting bygones be bygones is what we have to stop letting happen. We have to stop. We cannot let bygones no longer be bygones. So one of the things that I'm even saying that is real important here, what we need to do, is we need to set up an organization. This is what I'm doing. a whistleblower organization that protects whistleblowers the same way the U.S. Marshals, and John knows this, the same way U.S. Marshals had a witness protection program. The only way the prosecutors and the government can prosecute these crimes, you got to have people to come forward and they got to get protection.
Question.
Yes.
Dr. William Thompson from the CDC, the whistleblower for the MMR vaccine, they gag ordered him.
Right.
And he can't testify. So how do you reverse that gag order and allow him to testify and get the truth out?
Well, first thing, let me just say, there are a lot of whistleblowers, not just him. There are a bunch of them out here. Right. And there are other whistleblowers that could step up, even if they try to gag one. We got other people that can come up. The same way we prosecute crimes. We don't just sometimes have one witness. We have witnesses in the, waiting to come up. But we got to protect them. So U.S. Marshals, we are some of the ones, I protected dirtbags. I protected people, and I was like, man, this dude been killed and done all kinds of things, but I got to protect him because he's getting ready to testify for the government, on essential and critical things. But my point that I'm making is that we set up an organization to help expose the whistle and give them some type of, safe refuge, safe house, whatever. And let them know that you're not alone. Because when you file one of these complaints, and when you step up to this system, they really ostracize you, your best friends. I had everybody, including my family, they loved it. They said, Father, please don't do this. You got a great career in front of you, man. You got all these things. They love you, man. You even got the voice. Step away from the vehicle. Everything they thought about me, they said, Father, you guys don't go up against it. But I said, I swore to my God and took an oath. Now, when my black partner died in New York, I admit it, when I went to this room, man, I was crushed. When my fiance and everybody left me and I got evicted by U.S. Marshals here in Washington, D.C., I was crushed. Everything was happening. And then one thing when you get evicted, and then it starts raining. It rained. And God said, leave it because I'm going to restore what the cankerworm is taking. But my point that I'm making is what we have to do now is say, okay, how do we as doctors, how do we as law enforcement, how do all of us, because we have a whistleblower summit. Y'all need to come to that every July. This year we have it here. And these whistleblower summits bring in people, doctors, lawyers, every profession you can think of, and discuss what can we do. We all got one common group, one common denominator. And that denominator is we don't want to be ostracized. We're being ostracized and set aside. We need help. So when all of us come together, it is a great feeling. It's a great feeling when you got people there that are thinking, and you don't have to do a lot of talking to them. Because I can just look at you. You tell me you filed a complaint, I already know what you've been through. You don't have to tell me a whole lot. So my point is, this is what we need to do. We need to go to Congress. We need to demand that Congress has hearings on this stuff that we're talking about here today, doctors. And we need to demand that Congress gives whistleblowers better protections and support my organization. And when my book, Bigots with Badges, hits the scene, again, because this came from, it was a New York Post front page news story they did on me in 1997. Bigots with Badges. And you can go to my website, www.bigotswithbadges.com. And what I'm saying to you is when this stuff came out, nobody would have thought we would come, roughly 30 years almost today, and we would be talking about the same thing. So it says, and I've gone through 10 attorney generals. Matthew Fogg versus 10, man, let me tell you something. I don't know if anybody's done that, where you've been taking on 10 attorney generals, and I'm able to sit here and talk, and I'm not twitching and jerking and stuttering. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I'm just telling you. To God be all the glory. So, but we have to know. So when I hear the people that they're talking about, the doctors are saying how this stuff affects them. Of course, if you were targeting, everything is a domino effect. If you start targeting doctors and you start taking them out, then the goods and services that they offer the community, painkillers and all the rest of them, the community's going to start suffering. Everybody's suffering. So it is what we call what's the word? It's a domino effect. It's a domino effect. And so I'm just saying to you, I really appreciate being able to testify here, to be able to testify as a law enforcement officer. I'm very active in our communities. I'm running for office. I've run for office before for Congress. I'm currently running for an office in Maryland. And I want your support for my part. I'm not here for that. I'm here because I'm saying to you guys, we need to understand We gotta come together. That's why when Dr. Myers called me, I'm like, yeah, I'm in law group with Dr. Myers because we got common interests. And we're taking on a government. So that's why when the president stood there and said, it's a witch hunt, he said, this is a witch hunt. This is stuff that shouldn't be happening, and they're using the system to come out of me. Welcome aboard the enterprise. You know what I mean? We got to start saying that to him. You got to understand. It's happening to you. Well, now maybe you'll sit up there and you'll do something for us, whistleblowers, and the rest of us who are saying the same thing you were saying, Mr. President. A lot of these arrests have been witch hunts. And everything else and you can indict a ham sandwich. Y'all know what that means, right? You can indict a ham sandwich. So don't tell me I can sit there you can turn anything into a. I can take you put this pen on the table. We'll find you validated some federal law. Okay? So let's just understand that. Don't get all crooked. And I just tell people, when they charged him with, he said, one juror I never get, she says, when they said they had the drugs on him, so we had to find him guilty. I said, I just got one question. If it was your son, would you have found him guilty? No, hell no. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I see a couple of questions.
My name is Dr. Elder. I talk to you.
Oh, Dr. Elder.
Thank you, Stafford. Let's hear for the Stafford. Thank you. Before we ask you a question, I need to, at least, we have two more folks left. Say your questions until they're done. At this time, we have Mr. Billy Early, PA, Physician Assistant, Healthcare Advocate, active with the American, advisor to the American Pain Institute, Black Doctors Matter, World Sickle Cell Federation. Billy, following Brother Fogg, I think your presentation is a lot more easier now.
Yes, thank you.
It's like some water.
Basically, I'll be piggybacking.
In fact, y'all eat the food up. You know, they don't. Let's leave the big feet for me. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so basically, my presentation is going to be piggybacking on what Fogg was saying, good cop, bad cop. Right. And so last week, me and Dr. Luzon, attended the California Medical Board. And one of the discussions was opioids. And so they were talking about the doctors need to take a 12-hour mandatory course in the medical board through CMEs in order for them to, satisfy the guidelines in order to prescribe opioid medication. And so I happened to get on the line, so I told him one of my questions is that, there's doctors that have boarded certified, double board certified, and these doctors are being arrested. They've been put on television, exploited by the media, and they're being thrown in jail. Some of them for 20, 30 years. And so I told them that at the medical board, I said, you guys at the board, there's a disconnect going on between the patient with pain, between the doctor who treats patients with pain, and the disconnect is starting when the DEA and the medical board have a certain pathway that they're taking. So doctors who write prescription medications for pain medications, these doctors are all placed in jail. And a lot of it has to do with misconduct. Right. Where does the misconduct start from and stems from? Well, it starts from the setup. The board members are appointed members by the governor. And the enforcement part of the medical board is stemming from the Department of Justice. And what we found out is that that's where you have the disconnect between the Department of Justice and between the doctors, the judges, and all this stuff right here. So with the board itself, these members, they have no training. They're governing a large police force, right? In the medical board, there's 50,000 doctors that's being investigated yearly, according to the Federation of Medical Boards. All these doctors here, the board members, none of them have any police experience. There's no experience with police misconduct reprimanding police activities or knowing about police activities with the actual board members. The enforcement is the people who, the police, it's a hidden police department, the medical board, a hidden law enforcement department, and these officials here are doing a lot of misconduct, as you know, Matthew. Most of the conduct, we consider this misconduct as medical violence, excessive force. What are these types of misconduct here? Retaliation is very, very common. Bullying patients and doctors and their family members. Evidence tampering. They're tampering with evidence. They're tampering with video evidence. They're tampering with chart evidence. They're tampering with witnesses. All kind of evidence tampering. Concealing evidence. Concealing evidence is very, very common through this system, administrative law system, where you go through the judge and you have this medical board, enforcement entities that's investigating you and charging you with certain things that you don't believe you've done. So concealing of bad evidence is very, very common. Manufacturing evidence is another thing. They call these things here accusations. The medical board, the DEA, they make accusations, they take your property and stuff, but actually they're false police reports. But under state law, we call them accusations. And so that's where there's a big problem is that right there. And we need to find ways of changing that right there. Colluding with the judges. This is a very, very big problem. Most of the attorneys are judges. I got a case where, I have a judge, and he works as a U.S. attorney. And, I have a lawsuit against the U.S. attorney. And where he worked, the two companies, they had contracts with the Department of Justice. Between the two companies he worked for, over $100 million in Department of Justice contracts, vendor contracts with the Department of Justice. And so this judge right here basically ignores everything. Any type of evidence that shows misconduct from the other side, he ignores me too. So this is another type of thing that's going on in California and other places as well. Also, a form of medical violence, excessive force, is targeting doctors of ethnic color, right? Doctors of ethnic color, sex, religion, on your economical status, where you work at and stuff. Most of the attorneys who you grab for the medical board, when you get a case, they have to say, hey, look, these guys are not your friend, and they're targeting the fruits on the lower part of the tree, right? The low-hanging fruits, they say. These are the targets right here that we want to get. And that basically, that's who they're targeting right there. Also, the enforcement. So the disconnect between the enforcement and the actual board members. So the board members, they just get the stuff stacked up like Matthew just gave us a presentation. And so they get this stuff and say, okay, this is what this guy did. Okay, let's all vote on it. Yeah, he's bad. That's, blah, blah, blah. But what the problem is that they don't see any misconduct. So what we found out is that there's doctors who actually are being murdered. Just like Matthew said, one of his friends, he was devastated. Somebody was murdered. We're following this Dr. Jackson, who was also murdered. Black, prominent African-American doctor. He went to he was targeted by the medical board. The medical board put a targeted evidence, made all these false charges against him and stuff. He went to court, the 9th District, and he won his case. He got back, he had this big meeting with the National Medical Association, the Golden State Medical Association, the Black American Political Association Committee. He met with Al Sharpton Group, Reverend Tulos, I don't know if any guys know him, and several of his members. He also met with the medical board, public information officer, Cassandra Hawkinson. He met with her. Also, Earl Hutchinson was there. I think he's a black reporter. And the Wade newspaper was there too. So he had a big organization that he got together. And Dr. Jackson got these people together because why? He said, I'm going to sue the medical board of California for racism and discrimination against blacks and people of ethnic color. 4 or 5 days after that meeting, Dr. Jackson was dead. So I've been approaching the medical board, the president of the medical board. We've been having certain rallies also in front of the Department of Justice.
Don't forget to mention that he won in the Superior Court.
He won, yes, yes.
At the state level in California.
Yes, yeah, he won in the Superior Court.
Right.
And that's why he got all these people together, and so everybody was on board. Let's sue. And then, 4 or 5 days later, this guy's dead. And then, everything came to a grinding halt then. And so what I found out is that the medical board, in that meeting, the medical board tried to come up to Cassandra Hawkinson, who also died, a couple of months after he did. They said that they conducted a study from 1993 to 2013 that stated that, there was discrimination. This was a study that the medical board conducted. But he stated, and other people stated in that meeting, that study was, sham, right? It was flawed. They removed 100 of the cases against where black people had complained to black physicians or physicians of ethnic color. And so what happened was, when he died like in November, and in January of 2017, he died in November 2016. In January 2015, the medical board published that research journal, right?
What was the cause of death?
I haven't been able to determine that yet, though.
I looked as well.
Yeah.
Without a trace.
Yeah. But in this research they published, they acknowledge his name in there, thanks to Dr. Jackson in there. And so that's been one of our major concerns right there, is trying to get the medical board to remove this. Also, we have Dr. Uzan here. There is a Department of Justice ring that's going on, where these Department of Justice officials, using their capacities as the chief investigators, fraud investigators, these people here are targeting clinics and doctors, the sexual doctors, and they're targeting them with false scam investigations using the Department of Justice, resources to do that there. And we have evidence of that right there. We also have evidence that if you make a complaint, and I know all of you doctors have probably made complaints against the Department of Justice. I've made hundreds of them against these crooked people. There's crooked cops and there's good cops. The medical board has a lot of crooked cops. The DEA has a lot of crooked employees too. When you make a complaint to these people right here, they will not investigate it. They'll send everybody, every one of us will get something saying, we looked at it, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing we could do. Try to get a better lawyer next time. Dr. Uzan has a document, an interagency document that shows 100%. He reported fraud that was being done by, she's a sitting judge now, and her husband and all this stuff here, a big fraud. He reported this here to the Department of Justice, and they said, we're not going to look at this because those are our clients. These people are our clients here, and brush this guy off and, send him back to the medical board. He's like Dr. Markman. I don't know if you heard of Dr. Markman. This doctor went to the medical board, he was humiliated so much and beat up over there. He went over there in his underwear. He went there in his underwear to the medical board by these employees that are crooked over there. But the thing to take home here is, if you make a complaint, and this is what we're trying to get somebody to hear, if you make a complaint to the medical board about police misconduct, which they should investigate. They say they investigate it, and by law they have to. They're not investigating it, and we have proof that they're saying they're not going to investigate none of it, and they're just going to, brush you off. That's what it is. They're going to protect themselves, and they got that in there. So that's my basic presentation.
Can I just make one quick comment?
Yes.
Racism is definitely a big factor here.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be critical. In Louisiana, we have a black legislative caucus. And I have called them, I have written them, I have knocked on their door. I can't even get them to return a phone call.
Some of the biggest races in the world are black people.
Unbelievable, right? So, how do you put up with this for 30? I don't know how I put up with it.
The only way, one of the ways that Dr. Huff can say, Village, one of the things we'll listen to you saying, what I found out, I think that say just real quick. I think one of the ways of combating this stuff is the social media networks that we have available to us today. We got to put this stuff out there. Just like I'm looking at talking to people now about coming up on a webpage called Alleged Discriminating Officials. Okay, we got to do it. We got to put their names. See, people are very conscious. We take these same people that you talked about, where everybody said we can find no wrongdoing, and we put the complaints out there and have their name and their profile. These many complaints have been filed against this person. But what happens is everything gets kept quiet, so nobody knows about it. So you're just somebody blowing in the wind.
Well,
That's
also,
what
I feel we got one congressional staffer left here. We have Paula Rice, she's a nurse practitioner, LPN, RN, and nurses are also going through the same thing. Paula, while we still have a couple of staffers here, why don't you tell them what your situation is?
Well, my situation was, I was a LPN in 72, an RN in 78, a UC Davis graduate in California in 1995. I went before I got a complaint from another nurse practitioner in our small town of Lake Havasu City, Arizona. She complained to me that I've also been a chronic pain patient since 1995. I had polymyalgia rheumatica, which is very painful. Then I was left with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So this nurse practitioner that was in town in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, she called the board and said she's acting funny on medications. So I went 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all you're given before the State Board of Nursing in Arizona. I went before them and gave my 5-minute presentation about I was not guilty, I was not doing illegal drugs, I had to take a pain management medicine so I could continue working. They still found me guilty. I had to do a 2-year probation and disciplinary action. My name is on the National Data Bank, so I could not find a job. I was solicited by a woman in Phoenix, Arizona, that solicits on nurse practitioners and physicians that have had complaints, so they will work for her for a smaller price to get through their probation and their discipline. That happened. I did it. Then in 2013, when I quit her clinic, she again called the Board of Nursing and said I was prescribing my own medications, on and on and on, all false accusations. The Board of Nursing is run by a nurse that was a county hospital nurse. When the county hospital closed in Phoenix, she was given the Board of Nursing job, and she still sits at that job to this day. This woman is just discriminatory. She uses no fair justice practices. I don't know if you're aware of who sits on these boards. 5 RNs, 4 LPNs, and 2 lay people sit on these boards that are ruining careers every day. When I went for my first 5-minute presentation, I saw at least 50 nurses get a discipline. These disciplinary actions give these Board of Nursing a job. They collect a paycheck for 2 or 3 years monitoring a person. This is giving them their paycheck. They stop our careers. They do not care if I graduated from 3 different nursing colleges. They do not care if I graduated from UC Davis, California. They did not care if they gave me an order to go home and close my own family private practice. I had to go home to my town in 2006, lose my $60,000 investment in my office, and I had to close my doors because the nursing board, the investigators told me to go close my doors. I had to do it. So I was forced. So in 2013, when this stupid clinic owner called the board because she was mad at me because I quit her practice because I wanted a better practice. She was a ghetto nurse clinic owner who had no medical training. So I finally was through the probation, and then she calls the board with another complaint. None of her accusations were true. The clinic owner took my chart, broke my HIPAA violations, broke my Privacy Act, and I was done. I lost my home, bankruptcy, family, totally destroyed my life and my career. And I have nobody to turn to. There is not one lawyer I can have. I took my case with a lawyer the first complaint, all the way to the Department of Justice in Phoenix, Arizona, before Judge Eric Strasberg, and what he told me was, I understand. He said, but I am a state, Department of Justice. One state entity cannot go against another state entity, the nursing board. So I was wasted. I was defeated at that time. I have still been defeated. I don't know what to do. I'm here before you in Washington, coming from Arizona. I've practiced in Oregon, North Dakota, California, Arizona. No problems, no complaints ever from a patient. I've been in practice over 44 years. So I don't know what to do. But our medical boards are not staffed with people that can ruin your career and take your career away. But there is nobody to help you in this, and that's why I'm here. I need help to get back on my feet and get my licenses back. Now I am getting federal exclusions letters because I'm on some criminal list that I don't know how, I guess in 2013, instead of doing a discipline, I did a voluntary surrender, which was actually a forced surrender. The only reason I did that is because I wanted to find out what I could do. So Arizona's Board of Nursing was the initial complaining. So my license in California followed suit. Desiree Kellogg, I get a call from her. Your license is also being taken by California. We are not doing another investigation. We're just going by Arizona Board of Nursing. These nurses are not qualified in law or judgment. They are just nurses. She's just a county RN, and she destroyed my life and my career. So this needs to stop, and I need your help because I don't know what to do. This woman thinks she's queen.
What was your response when you contacted your two senators in the U.S. Congress?
No response, or not even
Is
here.
it Senator McCain, one of your...
Senator McCain, what I also found out is in these 12 years of investigation of this, is I found out that the governor's office takes voluntarily letters that they want to serve on the board. So the governor's office, his name and logo is on every page of disciplinary false accusations I got. And I said, what does the governor's office do with the Board of Nursing? Oh, we don't do anything. We just appoint the board. Then they said, you know who you've got to contact. You've got to contact your attorney general. I said, you were the attorney general that I contacted. She broke my civil rights. I got letters that this clinic had broken my civil rights because I was a disabled person. And I was on Social Security disability in 2008. So she broke my civil rights, but I only had 180 days to respond. I've had 2 spine surgeries, the last being in 2015. I am now ready to go back to work. I have recovered. I need to go back to work, but I can't because I have surrendered my license. What do you do? Anyway, so I took it to the Attorney General's office, Stephen Scott, the compliance manager. We don't have anything to do with the Board of Nursing. They have nothing to do with the Board of Nursing. The governor's office have nothing to do with the Board of Nursing. Once you get a job as the executive director of the Board of Nursing, you make all the rules over all the nurses. You are the queen of nurses, and you can destroy their career in 5 minutes. In this 12 years, I've only had 5 minutes in front of the Board of Nursing to plead my innocence. But they all go along with the queen, the leader. This needs to stop. These people need to only keep their jobs for 2 years at maximum in these boards. 2 years, and turn it over. This woman has been there for a long time. I brought together a support group in Phoenix of wrongly accused nurses and nurse practitioners. There were hundreds. I got 4 calls every day of nurses that have had their licenses taken away unfairly. This is wrong, and it's got to stop, and I will do whatever I have to do.
We want to make it clear to you that there are doctors here, there are nurses here, there are PA physician assistants here, and we're all treating this, experiencing the same types of mistreatment and misjustice, and we are really making an appeal to our members of Congress. This needs to be investigated.
Please help us.
And the only group of citizens that can help us is Congress. And you did make an appeal to Senator McCain. He did write you back?
That he sent the letter on to Doug Ducey, and I can't get an appointment. You know, Doug Ducey just does not see.
And your congressman is who?
Paul Gosar, and I have a meeting with him at 4:30.
Okay, good.
At his office here.
And before our last staff release is Sister Kelly Devine here. So Kelly's not here, okay. We wanted to make an appeal about kratom, that we don't want to see it as a scheduled drug. We don't want to see it as a scheduled drug. We don't want to see kratom as a scheduled drug because many of the chronic pain patients, kratom is their only alternative for chronic pain. Right now, the DEA is trying to make it a scheduled drug, and right now it's...
Senator Rowe has put in a bill that is a cover-up, but it's actually attacking kratom. It's just simply using that to get to kratom, but it's no good. Senator Bill Rowe of Tennessee takes that bill.
Kratom, K-R-A-T-O-M. We don't want to see it as a scheduled drug because it is a leaf, correct? A leaf?
It's a plant.
Yeah, the bill that Bill Rowe had, remember what it just says, any new opioid antagonist needs to be considered a scheduled drug, and kratom is a new opioid antagonist herb. That's why how you get into it, and people don't probably realize that what he's doing is attacking kratom.
So it's the only alternative. It's the only alternative chronic patients have is the use of this herb. And any patient, Dr. Tennant is here. Hold on a second, listen. Dr. Tennant is one of the leading pain specialists. He was forced into retirement by the DEA. He's recommending kratom for his chronic pain patients. We don't see it as a scheduled drug. We don't see it as a scheduled drug.
And I will tell you that I actually used it yesterday, and it did stop my pain. It really did. It worked quicker because I took Norco. I took a 10 milligram Norco, and I had to get my pillow to sit on because my lower back. But the kratom did work yesterday for a long time. And I was really surprised because by the time I went to sleep last night, my lower back did not feel like it normally does. So
and you use it as a tea, correct?
Well, I actually mixed it in with the water. So I mixed it in with this water like hardly mixed it in water. And there wasn't a whole lot that I drank, but it actually worked through this.
Office you from? You took it out. I would like to know who the greatest legislator is.
Maryland won 10 years.
All right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think somebody had a question.
Hi there.